Welcome to the Holistic Success Show. My name is Dr. Robert Puff.
And I'm Elizabeth Lozano.
Today, we're going to have a guest, and she'll be talking about living beyond organics. Not just organics, but living beyond them.
We're also going to see clips from Dr. Puff on how to live holistically healthy.
And then we're going to answer one of your questions about how to basically balance living life and dealing with all the hecticness in balance.
And we are also going to answer a question from our viewers about how to cope with the stress of having a partner who has lost their job and is now struggling with their self-esteem. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy our show.
What is holistic health? What do I mean by that? Holistic health is the whole picture, where everything matters, and when everything is well taken care of, your body, your mind, your spirit, all of you, when it's all going well, life flows well. But when something isn't paid attention to, when something is ignored, life doesn't go well. So it's really looking at the whole picture, the whole you, and making sure that every part of you gets attention, isn't neglected, so you can have a whole, happy life. And I want to use a personal example of my own that kind of showed when you neglect something, it has consequences. Years ago, I was in graduate school. I was in graduate school at Princeton. And, I was at the top of my world. I was very excited, one of the best universities in the world, studying with, top professors. And, it was a very exciting experience. I was going to the gym and working out and, and just doing a lot of really exciting things. But I remember one day, it was a beautiful spring day, and I went to this park, and I laid down on the grass, and I kind of was looking up at the sky, and I was watching the clouds go by, and I thought, wow, I've been here almost 2 years, and I hadn't stopped and just enjoyed being nature. Everything was enjoyed nature. Everything was about accomplishing something, getting something done. And so it was like this whole part of my life that I was neglecting. It wasn't that the other things were bad. It was just that I had neglected a whole part of my life. And if I kept neglecting that, it would have affected me in the long run. So as an analogy, where if you compare yourself to a plane, if you're a plane and you neglect the engines, what's going to happen? You're going to crash. If you don't have good pilots and they don't know how to fly very well, the plane isn't going to go very well. If even some screws get loose and isn't taken care of, there's going to be problems. So the whole plane has to be fine-tuned and regularly maintained so it can get off the ground, fly safely, and land on the ground. And your life is like that. Everything kind of has to be fine-tuned. And getting back to, are you taking care of your body? Do you exercise? Do you eat right? Are you taking care of your mind? Is your mind being mentally stimulated? Are you taking care of your spirit? Is there things that are just making meaning and purpose for you while you're here? And if you put those things together and you don't neglect one at the expense of others. When I was in graduate school, I was neglecting just being for achieving. I was so much focused on going in the future and making all these accomplishments, I neglected just what was happening here and now. I remember when I looking up at the sky, it was very, very sad for me because it was so beautiful, but I had missed it. So, what holistic success is looking at the past, looking at the future, and looking at now, and making it all fit together. And when it all fits together, life goes well, because everything is interconnected, and every part matters. It's not that you neglect a part, it's that you care for every part, and you realize if a part is taken care of, life goes well. If a part is neglected, life may not go as well. So there's a beautiful saying I love, and it really relates to you. It relates to the whole universe. If I pull a blade of grass, the whole universe shakes. What that means is, at a larger scale, when you take care of yourself, life goes well, and then you contribute to the greater universe and helping it go well. So by loving yourself, by taking care of yourself, what the show is all about, you are in a sense giving back to everyone around you and making the world a better place for you to live in, for me to live in, for all of us watching this show to live in. So take care of yourself and learn about holistic health. Peace.
Today's first question comes to us from John C. from Laguna Niguel, California, and he writes in our very hectic day-to-day family lives with all the responsibility that entails, spouse, children, parents, job pressures, etc., and most recently the financial concerns we all face, how do you find that balance and harmony you talk about?
You first have to start with, and what I do is I say, what's important? What's very, very important to me? And you have to ask that question yourself. For me, I make sure that every day I get some form of physical activity. I make sure I eat well, and that takes time. I make sure I spend time with my family. As you know, I love meditation, or you'll learn this about me. I really love meditation, so I make time for that. Then I kind of say what's left. And what's left is what fits in after that. So it will actually, to be balanced, it affects your career, it affects activities you do. Sometimes, even though I may enjoy TV, I don't watch a lot of TV because other things are important to me. So if you really know, if you have like a game plan saying this is what's important to me, this matters to me, then what you do is you work around that. So instead of saying, okay, will I have time to watch a sunset? Will I have time to eat well? Will I have time to exercise? You do those things, and then you say what's left. Mm-hmm. Sometimes what I recommend is seeing life as kind of the tortoise approach to life. And what do I mean by that? The tortoise and the hare, everyone knows that story where the tortoise wins the race. But she goes at a slow pace. So what it is, it's like, okay, being successful, because this is a holistic success show. There is nothing wrong with being successful, but it has to be balanced with self-care. So what you do is you say, I could perhaps, let's say you want to get a college degree right now. You could perhaps do it in 3 years, maybe you could do it in 5 years. But what if you did it in 8? And then you could spend time with your family and still work on your career. And what if you want to move up in your career and you want to do well at it? So you take some courses, but instead of taking 3 courses or working on a master's immediately, you may take 1 and take 5 years to do it. You can still get there, but you just take a little bit longer. So guess what happens? And I'm sure you know the answer, Elizabeth. You enjoy the journey. Instead of saying, someday I'll, enjoy it now. And then that's where you find balance. Because if you're enjoying every day, instead of saying I have all these years ahead of me, saying this may be the last day of my life, how am I going to live it to the fullest?
How am I going to spend it? Am I going to spend the majority of it working and not taking care of myself and not enjoying it with my family?
Because someday you'll say, when I retire, when I make all this money, then I'm going to enjoy my life. And that doesn't really work. What works much better is saying, I am going to work towards goals, I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to enjoy myself, and I'm going to take care of myself. And that does take time. So the tortoise approach is such that, well, I'm going to get there. I'm going to win this race called life, but I'm really going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy the journey. And when I get there, I'm going to be a whole person all along the way. So you don't put off 6 months of exercise. You don't put off 6 months of not eating well, or you don't put off eating fast, or you don't dive into eating fast food because you don't have time. You just take the time to do that. And you can still get there. You can still really have a successful life, but find balance. And that's what this show is all about, finding balance together with everything going on.
And I think something that's really important that you're going to hear us say over and over again is we like to think of the analogy of how you need to kind of prioritize things in your life, or how it's important if you really want to be holistically healthy. It's kind of like a pyramid where you've got yourself at the bottom, where you're taking care of yourself and what you need. You're eating healthy, you're exercising. Then you've got your relationship with your spouse, making sure that that relationship is good, and taking care of that, making time for that relationship. Then you also have your kids next, and that, you take care of your kids, you spend time with them, you make time for them. And for some people that sounds a little bit off. You expect me to put my kids afterwards, and I say that because if you're not okay, how can you really fully be able to take care of your kids? And ultimately what's last on that pyramid is your job. And that's important to see, because if we put it the other way around and we have our job first, that's what's going to happen, because you're not taking care of yourself. Maybe now you've become overweight, your relationship's a mess because you haven't taken time for it.
Horrible back pain.
Whatever other things might happen.
Can't sleep.
So we recommend to you, please take care of yourself. And that's what we're trying to teach here on the show is, be healthy, take the time to exercise, and you'd be surprised. You'll actually end up with a lot more energy. Even if you take, you want to start off with a 10-minute walk in the morning, maybe 15 minutes and work your way up, making time throughout the day.
The analogy I use, because as we both do consulting with businesses and things over the years, I've done a lot of it. And often when I approach a successful business person, I say, what if you worked an extra 5 years or 10 years? How much money would that add to the bottom line of your profits? And they'll say, whatever their income is, it could be millions of dollars. So I say, yeah, you may not make as much today, but if you can work an extra 5-10 years because you enjoy what you're doing, you're not so eager or anxious to quit what you're doing, it really has even fiduciary benefits to it. So don't think it's just about, I just got to lead this life and I'm just going to be a nobody, nothing's going to happen, I won't be very successful. But this actually isn't true. It's just finding balance. Because if you can survive and do well along the way, life goes well. But if you rush, what happens is often you crash. Heart attacks.
Yeah, and even illness, just, run-of-the-mill cold flu, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to get sick a lot easier. You're going to end up with back pains or neck pains that might actually keep you from work. So that's why it's so, so important for you to learn how to take care of yourself and make that a priority.
So thank you, John. Great question.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome to the show this week's guest, Christina Avenez. She is a food alchemist and the author of Living Beyond Organic, which is an amazing book that focuses on food and herbs and the enzyme properties in them. And I think it's an amazing story of how she got involved with creating this book and how she got all involved with teaching people how to eat in healthier ways. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself, how you got involved with this work?
I would love to, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me. I have to tell you that it was a crisis that got us into the whole healing properties of food and herbs, and it was because my husband had a heart attack almost 7 years ago. And it was a situation where we thought we were eating the best foods possible. We were eating what probably you're eating and everybody that you know is eating. We thought organic, free-range chicken breast without the skin was good. We thought limiting, red meat was good. We thought, eating keeping meats down to a minimum and increasing our grains, but we didn't know which grains. And so anyway, we thought we were going about our merry way. We thought we were fine until one day he had a heart attack. Wow. And then we found out he had an LDL of 289, and he also had high blood pressure, and it was just a combination of things that threw us into this crisis.
What should a normal LDL be at?
It should be below 100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It should be below 100. So his was very high. Very high. And so what happened was, because a good friend of ours was actually a cardiologist, and he had a lot of tests done to determine the severity of the heart attack. It's called a cardiolite test, and it's calibrated by a physicist, and it's a very, very in-depth test, very costly as well. And they did verify that it was a heart attack, and his doctor wanted to put him on medications right away, and it was a very serious time. So we just decided, it didn't feel right to immerse ourselves in medications for the rest of his life. So we explored alternatives, and we were fortunate to meet a natural healer who taught us the healing properties of food and herbs, phytoceuticals and nutraceuticals, and this is all based on an indigenous culture. And the practices of indigenous cultures really are just getting revived. And it's not something that's new. It's been around for a long time, but it's been forgotten. So I'm reviving it.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank goodness you have, because just speaking to you, I've learned so many amazing things that I'd like for us to share now with our viewers. So what are some of those foods, maybe we don't have to have a top 10 list, but what are some foods that you might say that people should definitely avoid?
Okay, one of the top things that's acid producing and very, very stressful on the body in terms of digestion and no nutrient value whatsoever is any kind of refined sugar. Okay. Any kind of refined sugar, any product that contains refined sugar, enriched flour. So if you pick up a loaf of bread and the first word is enriched, you want to just run screaming, go the other way, because it's not a good thing. You want to avoid iodized table salt. That is something very, very simple that you can just switch and use a product like, for example, real salt. And this is something that is actually detoxifying and actually helps to balance electrolytes in the body. And a lot of people haven't heard about it, but real salt is different from regular sea salt because it comes from a dead sea, so it's not exposed to the environmental pollutants of today's seas, and it also contains over 50 trace minerals because when it's mined out of the ground, it's not heat treated, it's not remineralized, it comes out of the ground with over 50 trace minerals. So I brought that for you to try.
Thank you.
And it wears a lot of hats in our house. I mean, we gargle with it first thing in the morning to clear out any mucus or any kind of bacteria that our tonsils might have accumulated in our resting hours. And because if your tonsils are working right, you should, clear them out first thing in the morning.
Wow, I had no
Because
idea.
otherwise what happens is you swallow all those toxins and they have to travel through your digestive tract. And along the way,
Wow.
you create pockets of toxicity.
Wow, so gargle with
Gargle
some of this
with
in the
real
morning.
salt,
Does
yes.
it matter warm water, cold water?
The body really prefers like room temperature.
Okay.
So that would be a good thing. But the most important thing is not the temperature, it's what water you're using, because the tap water can be contaminated with up to 91 known contaminants. So
Oh.
depending on where you live and if you haven't had your water tested, you want to avoid that and go with something like a natural spring water, preferably.
Okay.
And also, if you're making a solution of this for gargling, you could use distilled water if you like, because this remineralizes. So I wouldn't drink distilled water on a normal basis, but with real salt, it's okay because the mineral content will be elevated.
Oh, really good to know.
So I would say the next thing you want to eliminate is acidic coffee, because there's a growing trend nowadays with people getting their caffeine fix first thing in the morning, and really it's not about avoiding coffee, it's about knowing what coffee to use. So I brought along the one coffee that I do recommend, and that is Papua New Guinea coffee. This is the only coffee that is in my lifestyle because it is actually alkalizing and it helps to draw toxins out of your organs into the colon for elimination. So I brought that for you to try.
Wow, thank you very much.
You're
So
welcome.
I have a question. This sparks a question for me.
Yes.
Because I've heard the stories with alkalinity. So can you tell me a little bit more? Explain to me why alkaline.
Absolutely. Acidity is something that you want to counteract in the body because when you're acidic, you become a good host for harmful bacteria. And what happens is, over time, this actually breaks down your immunity. When your immunity gets broken down, you become more susceptible to virus, you have fatigue, you have poor digestion. There are all of the things that are associated with a lot of the major complaints that people have nowadays. So what happens is when you take foods into the body that help you to alkalize, you're neutralizing this acidic presence. Then what happens is, the byproduct of that is that you strengthen the immune system because you're no longer having a thriving colony of harmful bacteria that are multiplying in your system. So it's very, very, very important. And this is what foods can do for you. And the book is really teaching you what foods help and what foods to avoid.
Okay. So speaking of help, can you tell us some foods that would help a person that would be beneficial for them? Because we've talked a little bit about some of the things that we want to avoid. What are some that people should, gravitate towards?
Okay, the first thing I would tell you to do, and that would be pretty much anyone on the planet, whether or not you have a cholesterol problem or not, is first cold pressed extra virgin olive oil and half of an avocado every single day.
Wow.
And the reason for this is because our society, our culture has gotten so hung up on low-fat, non-fat, and all of these things that we have starved the body of a vital nutrient. Fats, actually cholesterols, are necessary for good brain function. So even if you don't have, high cholesterol, you want to eat good sources of cholesterol to maintain good brain function. And for those who are suffering from high cholesterol, the combination of oleic and lipoic fatty acids that olive oil and avocado possess actually eat up LDL like a Pac-Man.
Wow.
And that's how my husband lowered his LDL from 289 to below 100.
That is amazing, from olive oil and avocados.
That's definitely one of the first steps.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So where can people maybe listen to you, and where can they get a hold of you?
Well, the first thing you can do is log on to livingbeyondorganic.com. So you just go to www.livingbeyondorganic.com, and that website will have a plethora of information on me, on the book. You can even download my recommended food list from there, and you can listen to me on the radio. I'm the health and food expert on Your Time with Kim Iverson, which is based in Texas, but it's syndicated in 8 different cities. But you can always log on to my website. I upload the MP3s.
Well, good luck with everything. It was so wonderful to meet you and have you here on our show. Hopefully I know our viewers have gained a lot, and I have gained a lot too from this. And thank you so much for the wonderful gifts that I will try out, and I'm sure hopefully I can read your book and it will change my life as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Holistic health and the past. Why does the past matter with the present? How do they interrelate? Why would something in the past affect me today? And why does that help or hinder my being healthy? And let me explain. Who you are is shaped by what you were exposed to in the past. And really people differ on this. Scientists say different figures, but I like the figure of about 20% of who you are is shaped by your genetics. This is like what you're born with, and not much you can do about that. But I believe about 80% of who you are is shaped by your conditioning. That's your parents, your exposure they gave you, how they treated you, the school you went to, your friends, and just all the myriad of experiences you had throughout your life. That's who creates you for who you are now. So the key is saying, okay, well, how does that affect me today? Well, how it affects you today is what you have to first do is decide, what am I now that I like? Because it was shaped in the past. So I like this part of me. I like that I'm a diligent worker, or I like that I am kind to people. But let's say there's a part of you don't like. You don't like the way you eat, and you struggle with obesity, or you don't like the way you don't exercise because no one in your family ever exercised, and you wish you did. So that's the part you wish was different. So what you have to do is keep the good, keep it. Don't get rid of it, of course, but then work towards eliminating, or if I may say, change the past, change the bad past. And how do you do that? And it's really two things. The first thing to do, if it's emotional, and what I mean by that is, if something happened in the past that is causing you suffering, like let's say your parents got divorced, and because they got divorced, you now have a real adversity towards marriage, and you don't like marriage. You just have anger towards it. When you meet married couples, you don't like to go to weddings. You need to heal from that. And the way I like healing is there's two feelings that heal. One is you can feel sad about it, cry about it, and then you'll find you'll feel better. And the other one is anger. You can express your anger towards what has happened, and then you'll find that you'll feel better there. My book, Anger Work, How to Express Your Anger and Still Be Kind, is really all about healing. How do you heal? And anger will heal you, or sadness will heal you. So you need to choose one of those emotions and heal. And then your life will be better. And that's what therapy does, and going to groups. And a lot of viewers will understand what healing is. But let's say, it isn't a trauma from the past. It's just now conditioning. All it is habits that have been created inside of you because of your conditioning. And mostly of pretty much what we are is because of our conditioning, plus a little bit genetics. So let's say you have a habit in place that you want to change. Like again, let me use the example of, like I struggle with my weight, and everyone in my family struggle with weight. So what do I do about that? Well, you first have to be aware that this is your struggle. So awareness is really my favorite word in the universe. You can't change something unless you're aware of it. So if you say, I'm aware now that I get it, that, this comes from my past, and I don't necessarily have to struggle with weight. I want to work on that. Or, no one in my past ever went to college, and I want to go to college. That's important to me. And so I'm aware that this is something that's probably going to be harder for me than other people. So with that awareness, you start working on change. So how do you change? And that's probably the pivotal part of this whole discussion. How do you change after you've done the healing? And it's not complicated, but it does take work. And what I recommend is you first just say, this is what I want to change. And then again, using that weight example, you want to change on losing weight. So you start studying what do people do that have healthy bodies and are slim and trim. What do they eat, how they exercise. You join a gym, you may get a trainer, and you're basically reconditioning yourself. You're exposing yourself to new things so you can change. And perhaps the best thing I can do is give you my own personal example. I grew up in the Midwest, and though I had Midwestern experience, if I can call it that way, part of it that came out of that for me was depression. I struggled with depression, and there was a negativity inside of me. And I became aware of that. I realized, there's a part of me that's kind of negative, and I don't like that part of me, and I want to change that. It wasn't emotional damage anymore. It was just a conditioning I had. I might see the cup half empty instead of half full. So what did I do? I actually just exposed myself all over the place through books, audio, CDs, listening, being around about positive people and how they thought and how they lived life, and really surrounded myself with positive images, positive books, positive CDs, and listened to them. And it literally changed me. And this was many, many years ago. And if you know me now, if any of you know me, if you ever meet me, you'll find me to be one of the most positive people you probably have ever met. I am very, very positive. I actually have a book called How to Live a Positive Life. And it's all about, the benefits of being positive holistically, putting that together. So if you want to change something, you really got to kind of re-educate yourself. And you re-educate yourself by diving into it. So first decide, okay, I want to change this, and I want to change this in my life. Don't choose too many things. You'll get overwhelmed. That's number one. Choose two. I recommend two. And then just expose yourself to the new conditioning. Like in my case, I listen to positive things. If you are like me, you struggle with depression or being negative. I mean, really, if you got my CD, How to Live a Positive Life, and you listen to it over and over and over again, you would find you would become way more positive, because you just would see things differently. You're getting reconditioned, and that reconditioning will change you. And if you understand that, then all of a sudden, life, these things that I used to do that I wish were different aren't there anymore. I don't get depressed or almost ever anymore. And for years I haven't, because I really have reconditioned myself. So decide again through awareness what you want to change, and then take the time to change. And once change is in place, it now is your conditioning. So you don't have to change anymore. You don't have to work on that anymore. It just will be natural for you. It's very natural for me to be positive. I don't struggle with that. And then you can choose another thing. Next thing, well, now I want to work on perhaps, I want to get more education. So then you'd work on that goal. So focus on it, surround yourself with it, and recondition yourself. And then you can change the past. So I wish you a really wonderful life and peace.
Our second question comes to us today from Colleen F. from Corona, California. And her question is, many of my female friends are working again to help out while their husbands aren't working. How can a wife cope with an unemployed husband whose self-esteem has gone down because of his inability to find a job?
There's two ways I want to answer that. One is, how do you cope with your husband or deal with your husband? And men get a lot of their self-esteem through what they do. So right now, any woman that has a husband who isn't working right now, I can guarantee you he's like a very raw nerve, very sensitive. So what you want to be careful of doing, you don't want to be attacking him, you want to be criticizing him. No one will win. He's already being self-critical, most likely, unless he has incredible self-esteem. He's probably already being pretty self-critical. So you don't want to feed to that. You want to just love him and encourage him.
And I was just going to say, be aware of if you're being passive-aggressive, because sometimes we can do it in passive ways that we might not even be realizing it, like little snide remarks, or even something that we might think is kind of innocent, but it really isn't. It's a little jab.
Well, and that's a second segue. That's a great segue to my next point of it, is how are you doing? How are you doing as a spouse? It's difficult, because it may affect your finances. You may be forced back to work. And you need to make sure, because he may not be, normally he's a great support, he loves you, but right now he may not have much to give. His cup is pretty empty. So are you meeting with your girlfriends? Are you getting your family involved? Are you just having a support network for you? Because if you're depleted, you sure won't have much to give him. But if you have things filling you up, then when you see him down and depressed, you can encourage him and be positive and give him ideas and work with him and work as a team. But if you're depleted, I think what happens is your frustrations on life can be taken out on him. And that's a downward spiral that ends very darkly. So realize, it's a very sensitive part. Men really get their self-esteem through what they do. Most men do. So you love him and you support him. And you talk about it too. If you see him all day sitting around not doing anything for a job, we just need to talk about that. So you might need a third party to come in and say, hey, can we talk about that? But I have a really good plan that I recommend when people don't have work. And what I recommend is, if they're not working, they should be working towards getting a job full-time. meaning they should be spending around 40 hours a week looking for a job or doing resumes,
Which
sending them out.
often doesn't happen.
But if it does, you'll feel better. So if it doesn't, then you kind of say, well, what is our game plan? Maybe he can make up some of this, things like helping around the house more, doing more. But if you still do all the activities and he does nothing, I think at that point you really need to sit down and talk.
Because that's going to create irritability on you, on your part too. Like, I'm doing everything and you're sitting at home doing nothing. And that's what I'm talking about when I say the passive aggressiveness that can kind of come out because you're frustrated that, okay, you've been at work all day and he's sitting here, he's not working, you don't know what he's been doing. So it's important that, you know, you guys talk and make a plan about how we're working together to find him a job, and like also how he can help out around the house or doing things that are going to benefit both of you. And also, I would think, tell him how much you appreciate him and appreciate the work that he does, because so often, you know, we point out the things that we don't like and we don't talk about the positive things that our partner does for us, and that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, what if he's been supporting, you know, financially supporting you for 20 years and he's off for 6 months? You know, there's a little bit of grace there. You know, be kind, be gentle. Positive always works better. I mean, I have a book entitled How to Live a Positive Life. And it's all about that. You need to really focus on being loving and kind. I mean, if you need help, you know, navigating the conversation and helping him get work, great. But encourage him to get support. It's very difficult. You know, have him maybe talk to his male friends and maybe go to support groups, and, you know, if he's involved with church, you can go there. But getting people to help him too. There's great resources out there. And, you know, work as a team and talk about it and how we doing. And, you know, maybe your job would be to cut back, say, well, we'll spend a little bit less here until things get better. But, you know, that loving support that we have when we're there for each other is awesome. When it's not there, when we start attacking each other, it can be the demise of the marriage. So use this as a time for growth, to really love your husband and love yourself. Get support for yourself too.
Good luck, Colleen. And thank you for your question. Each week, Dr. Puff and I are going to share with you a motivational, inspirational, or maybe just funny quote to give you throughout the week. And this week's quote I found, and it is by Arthur C. Clarke, and it reads, "The only way of finding the limits of the possible is by going beyond them into the impossible." So with that, I would just want to say to you, you know, don't be bound by the conventional limits or fears of others. Believe in yourself and take chances, because you are capable of doing great things and living the life that you want. You just have to look beyond what you can see. Thank you for joining us on the Holistic Success Show. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you have a great week. But I first want to let you know that we can't do this without you. We need your questions.
And what happens with your questions is we will do our best to answer them. But as a reward or as a thank you for giving them to us, go to our website and you can pick out any book, any CD or DVD that you want, and we'll send it to you for free, and we'll try to autograph it to you as a way of saying thank you, because we really want you to be part of the show and help other people through your questions to answer what they're struggling with as you are struggling too.
Thank you very much, and we hope you have a wonderful week.
Peace.